past, could say contamination or attachment, then I need an axe to cut it down. I need it chopped down. And that will also be today's theme of what it is that main axe. Because she was stating a fear, and that how much suffering she is experiencing. And I asked you all to raise your hand if you wanted to be freed from suffering, and I think almost everyone raised their hand. So, or if we're affected by these things that we see, and how many times, especially more recently, it's never, and I've only been on this planet for, a short time, but I've never seen things get better my entire time. It's just getting worse. And I also found in the journey that the more I'm attached to something that is not permanent, then the worse things seem actually as well. So taking her cue of how to get free of this, Kapila is going in very detailed information of how to see this nature, how to see this the material elements. And he says that Krishna has created this material world, and it's beyond our perception of, because we get so attached so quickly that we don't distinguish, my sense of touch and the soul's sense of touch, or the soul's sense of hearing and the soul's and the body's. We become so attached, and what is it? I am this body. That's the first concept that Srila Prabhupada, that we're not this body, but we're just so accustomed, and the whole. Not only is the nature kind of driving us to that, because when it's cold, I am cold, right? I'm cold today. But am I cold? Or is it this body that's cold? But since we've identified it so strongly, I'm cold today. And so the more and more he starts to go from very subtle things to more grosser things of understanding this nature. And so I think yesterday we went over the false ego, and the false ego has three different influences. What were they? Goodness, passion, and ignorance. And each one of those gives rise to yet another very subtle aspect. So when the false ego is under the influence, and this one is actually quite astonishing. When the false ego is under the influence of goodness, what is manifest? This is surprising.
Sober status.
What was that?
Sober status, understand it.
Yeah.
False ego and what?
False ego under the influence of the mode of goodness gives rise to another thing that we deal with every day, every moment of the day.
The mind.
The mind. How can you conceive that? Because we're always thinking the mind is such a problem. But in its true nature, for us to understand this is like a key. This is one of these things that if we could understand this, as Devahuti is asking, it becomes like an axe that the mind, we always damn the mind, and we're always, the mind is such. But if we understand its true nature, and its original nature is under the influence of the mode of goodness, then there's an opening there for us. How do we get to that part? how do we get to that stage? And so I'm sure you heard some things on that yesterday. And then the false ego under the modes of passion is, yes,
Intelligence.
the intelligence. Because passion is what? Goodness is like, okay, you kind of come to, goodness is kind of like you're calm, you see things as they are, but the intelligence is under passion. Now, how do we do this? Because the mind is taking direction from that false ego, and so and again, if you go back, keep going back in Kapila's teaching, the false ego is under the direction when we are misidentifying ourselves as a false ego, as a embodied person, then obviously the mind is engaged in that misidentification. Then the intelligence is trying to fulfill the desires of the mind. And then, I think the last verse yesterday you went over is that under ignorance, what is the ego presenting? What is the ego's manifestation in the mode of ignorance?
This sound.
Sound, which is the beginning of our senses. The senses themselves are, that we say it every day, Sarira Vijadal, that this body is a lump of ignorance and the senses are paths of that ignorance leading us to death. Very strong. Yes, Bru.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to ask if I was understanding you right, because this is also in correspondence with the creation of the whole material manifestation, right?
Yeah.
And it makes me think of like as within, as without. Yeah. So within, so without, as within, so without.
Life flows on within you and without you. What's as within, as without? Is that a quote?
I think so.
Okay.
As above, so.
Huh?
It's also said as above, so below. It's like a herd
So these things, so the sound, and then giving now these verses, and we're just going to read the translations. We'll read them right through. These are now. This is like here. These things are under the false ego's manifestation of the mode of ignorance and the senses. And so again, why is this important to us? If we find the true nature of the senses or how they are manifest and what are their influences, then you're going to know, oh, under this particular influence, this particular sense goes a little haywire. Perhaps I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't put myself in situations. So let's go ahead and start reading. It's text 33 we're starting on, not 3. I'll start with that one, and we're going to come back to 33 because the purport is just extraordinary. 33, persons who are learned and who have true knowledge define sound as that which conveys the idea of an object, indicates the presence of a speaker, screened from our view, and constitutes a subtle form of ether. We'll get into some purports on these, but go ahead, we can take turns reading the verses up to 49.
The activities and characteristics of the ethereal element can be observed as the accommodation of room for the external and internal existences of all living entities, namely the field of activities of the vital air, the senses, and the mind.
From ethereal existence, which evolves from sound, the next transformation that takes place under the impulse of time, and thus the subtle element of touch, and thence the air of the sense of touch become common.
Softness and hardness and cold and heat are the distinguishing attributes of touch, which is characterized as the subtle form of fire.
The action of the air is exhibited in movements, mixing, allowing approach to the objects of sound and other sense perceptions, and providing the proper functioning of all other senses.
By interactions of the air and the sensations of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. By evolution of such forms, there is fire, and the eye sees different forms in color.
My dear mother, the characteristics of form are understood by dimension, quality, and individual. The form of fire is appreciated by its effulgence.
Fire is appreciated by its light and by its ability to cook, to digest, to destroy cold, to evaporate, and to give rise to hunger, thirst, eating, and drinking.
By the interaction of fire and the visual sensation, the subtle element taste evolves under superior arrangement. From taste, water is produced, and the tongue, which perceives taste, is also manifested.
Although originally one taste becomes manifold as astringent, sweet, bitter, pungent, sour, and salty due to contact with other substances.
The characteristics of water are exhibited by its moistening of other substances, coagulating various mixtures, causing satisfaction, maintaining life, softening things, driving away heat, incessantly supplying itself to reservoirs of water, and refreshing by slacking thirst.
Due to the interaction of water with the taste perception, the subtle element odor evolves under superior arrangement. Thence the earth and the olfactory sense, by which we can variously experience the aroma of the earth, become manifest.
Odor, although one becomes many as mixed, offensive, fragrant, mild, strong, acidic, and so on, according to the proportions of associated substances.
The
characteristics of the functions of earth can be perceived by modern forms of the Supreme Brahman, by constructing places of residence, by preparing pots to contain water, etc. In other words, the earth is the place of sustenance for all elements.
The sense whose object of perception is sound is called the auditory sense, and that whose object of perception is touch is called the tactile sense.
The sense whose object of perception is form, the distinctive characteristic of fire is the sense of sight. The sight whose object of perception is taste. The distinctive characteristic of water is known as the sense of taste. Finally, the sense whose object of perception is odor. The distinctive characteristic of earth is called the sense of smell.
Since the cause of existence is in effects as well, the characteristics of the former are observed in the latter. That is why the peculiarities of the elements exist in the earth alone.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's go to 33. We'll chant it. Now, one thing I would say is that we're not going to cover all of these details. But Prabhupada says in one of these purports, I don't think I can find it, but he said, these are things that our scientists can really pull out and really, and we have right here in Gainesville, we have this wonderful Bhaktivedanta Institute that are doing things like this, that are really trying to bring this out, and certainly these purports, many of these purports are lengthy, and Srila Prabhupada is pulling it out for our understanding. So if you have some time and really want to know the details of these, please read them. But let's chant 33. Artashrayatvam shabdhasya Drashturlingatvam cha Tanmatratvam cha nabaso Lakshanam kavayo vidu. Atashrayatvam shabdasya. Drashturlingatvam cha. Tanmatrutvam cha navaso. Lakshanam kavayo vidu.
Artashratyatvam sabdasya. Drashturlingatvam cha. Tanmatratvam vacha nabaso. Lakshanam kavayo vidu.
Artasratyatvam sabasya. Drasturlingatvam evacha. Tanmatratvam chamabaso. Lakshanam kavayo viduh. Artashrayatvam shabdasya. Drasturlingatvam evacha. Tanmatratvam chanabaso. Lakshanam kavayo viduh.
Word for word. Arta ashrayatvam. That which conveys the meaning of an object. Shabdasya. Of sound. Drastu. Of the speaker. Lingatvam. That which indicates the presence. Eva. Also. Cha. And. Tat matratvam. The subtle element. Cha. And. Nabasha. Of ether. Lakshanam. Definition. Kavaya. Learned persons. Vidu. No. Persons who are learned and who have true knowledge define sound as that which conveys the idea of an object, indicates the presence of a speaker screen from our view, and constitutes the subtle form of ether. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. I'm going to read just the first paragraph for now, and then the second paragraph, which is also extraordinary. I'll read in a little bit. It is very clear herein that as soon as we speak of hearing, there must be a speaker. Without a speaker, there is no question of hearing. Therefore, the Vedic knowledge, which is known as Shruti, or that which is received by hearing, is also called a Purusha. A Purusha means not spoken by any person materially created. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hridha. The sound of Brahman or Veda was first impregnated unto the heart of Brahma, the original learned man, Adikavaye. How did he become learned? Whenever there is learning, there must be a speaker in a process of hearing. But Brahma was the first created being. Who spoke to him? Since no one was there, who was the spiritual master to give knowledge? He was the only living creature, therefore the Vedic knowledge was imparted within his heart by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated within everyone as Paramatma. Vedic knowledge is understood to be spoken by the Supreme Lord, and therefore it is free from the defects of material understanding. Material understanding is defective. If we hear something from a conditioned soul, it is full of defects. All material and mundane information is tainted by illusion, error, cheating, and imperfection of the senses. Because Vedic knowledge was imparted by the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to material creation, it is perfect. If we receive that Vedic knowledge from Brahma in disciplic succession, then we receive perfect knowledge. Om Gana Chamanandasya Ganam Jana Shavakaya Chakshu Manitamina Tasmai Shri Vedma Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam. Namaste Girirajaya Shri Gopinana Namaniya Shesha Kleshana Shaya Paramanandadayane Vrindavani Vinde Vishwabhujita Pushpasaranandani Krishna Jeevanil Vishwabhavani Tulsi Vanchakapal Churubhyascha Kipasmadurya Vicham Patitana Paranebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So this is quite a turn. You would think this section of verses, Prabhupada would get into the real science of it, but he's actually bringing us to the essence of hearing. The essence of hearing is because through this science of hearing and the sound and how it's created, we will hear so many things. And because it is a material element, it is full of defects. And he lists the four. The illusion, under illusion, there's tendency to commit mistakes, error, there's cheating, and then the imperfection of the senses themselves. The very senses themselves are imperfect. And so when we engage in things that are just on the sense level, we are not really interacting with things on the soul level or the personal level. Now, there are ways to acquire knowledge, and there's a broad segment called three particular ways. And the first is through the senses, and that is technically called pratyaksha. What we see, what we feel, what we taste, what we hear, these things, there is some knowledge acquired. We are cold today, but the truth is, actually our body may be cold today. So there's still some defect there, and so many times we'll hear of an incident in the news, and I won't go there, but let's just say 2 people or 5 people on different sides of an intersection, they see an accident happen. If you ask each one of them, they're going to have a different perception of that accident. Some of them are going to say, I saw everything, but they were looking at their phone, but I saw everything. And so immediately their transmission of that account is full of errors. And even if somebody was actually looking, they're only looking at one, and you see, nowadays, like there's cameras everywhere. And you see them from one angle, it looks like one completely different thing when you look at another angle. Oh, this person was off the line, or this person was, in the wrong lane or something. But on one angle, it looks perfectly fine. So from just on that level, pratyaksha, just using the senses as our source of knowledge, is full of defects. It's probably material understanding is defective. So the senses themselves are defective. So the second type of acquisition of knowledge is kind of, you think about it. You think about it, you hypothesize and you theorize, and this is technically called anuman, or deduction, taking some deduction. So if you see, a lot of times this happens at the end of an accident. The police or the different people, the insurance people, they'll come and they'll look at it. Well, you said you stopped, but I don't see any skid marks. Therefore, I think you weren't stopping. And so there's some deduction there. There's some figuring it out by the what has been achieved by the first set of knowledge. You acquire some knowledge through the senses, through interviews, and this and that, and then you make some deduction. This we see carried out in juries and courtrooms all day long. That's what they're doing. They're trying to figure things out based on perceptions, based on this. But the best of all knowledge is, again, or transmission of knowledge is ardashrayatam shabdasya, of that which is heard. So if we had a very truthful person behind the wheel of that car, now if we hear from them what happened, I was looking at my phone and I would, if they were truthful, of course, then okay, that's the true source. That's the best source for that particular instance. And so this understanding of the different levels of taking in knowledge and understanding a thing, Srila Prabhupada would emphasize over and over again that the best means is Shabda, and then not just Shabda from anyone. He says from a person who is qualified, who knows the truth. And we hear this Tad vidi pranipatina pariprasnena saiva gurumeva abhigache. All of these things again and again. Those who have seen the truth, Om Agana Tamarandasya, they're giving it. And again, I'll repeat it again. Devahuti started this by giving this example of those who have seen the truth. They can give this understanding. And we're in the darkness of ignorance. When it's dark, we cannot, certainly pratyaksha is useless. You can't see, therefore you can't theorize. But when the light is on, then you can see everything very clearly. Now, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, also Krishna is stressing this. Maya Shakta Mana Prarta Yoga Yunjam Madashraya Samagrasya Samagram Yam Yata Gya Yashi Touch Shrinu. He's telling Arjuna, you can understand me fully and without any doubt, but you have to hear me. Touch Srinu, just hear from me. And if you hear from me, everything, all your misgivings, everything can be taken away. If we hear, because what better Shabda source is Krishna himself, who is the creator, who is put into action all of these senses. So when we are hearing from Kapila, we are hearing from Krishna's incarnation. So certainly everything that Kapila is saying is direct Shabda. And in relation to that, everything Shukadeva is relating to or relating of this conversation is Shabda. And as we extend that, everything Srila Prabhupada is giving us in this is Shabda. These aren't contaminated. And how many times would Prabhupada say that, politicians will stand up with the Bhagavad Gita, yes, the Bhagavad Gita, and then they're putting forward their ideas. As Krishna says, no non-violence. And Prabhupada would say, what do you mean, Krishna? There's no non-violence in the being taught in the Gita. The Gita is teaching Arjuna to fight. So that's just a crude example. Prabhupada, he was a follower of Gandhi at one point, but then when Gandhi started to use the Bhagavad Gita to put forward his ideas, then Srila Prabhupada did not like that so much. Now this last part of the program, we're running out of time, is very wonderful, and I'll tell you, Mother Yamuna, some of you may have heard of her. She was a great cook, a great spiritual leader in our movement. She used to use the term Krishna magic. And Krishna magic basically was meaning, and I believe that also Srila Prabhupada used it, I think, in one of their exchanges. He said, oh, that's magic. It's Krishna magic. So Krishna magic means that something happens completely unexpected, but it gives rise immediately to some realization of Krishna. It's like, how does this happen? How does this happen? So I will say this paragraph of the purport, and it's not that it's anything special, but for me it was like Krishna magic because, I just reviewed this verse last evening. And yesterday morning, every morning when I do my service to the deities, I listen to Srila Prabhupada, a lecture. So in 1973, Srila Prabhupada was speaking a 2-hour lecture. It was a 2-hour room conversation, and he's speaking with a professor, and his name was Dr. Lucock. He is from Cambridge University. When Srila Prabhupada was speaking to educated persons, the conversations are just extraordinary. Because here's somebody who's actually very intelligent, and he's really goes on and on. So I heard that, then I read this, and it was like, wow, this is exactly what I was just hearing. And so I'll read this purport, and then perhaps I'll relate something from that talk. Every word we hear has a meaning behind it. Every word we hear has a meaning. And certainly this is true when we are studying Sanskrit, because the Sanskrit is Shabda. It is perfect. And so every time we study our Sanskrit, when we look at these word meanings, they have so many different implications. When you look at some of the Acharya's commentaries, they'll both Vishwanath and Sanatana Goswami, they'll say something, and then or it means this, or it means this, or it means this, and it's like, wow. And just a simple example of like Putana, when the killing of Putana happened, and Srila Prabhupada gives us too. He says, when Krishna closed his eyes, it means this, or it could have means this, or it means this, because it's so technical and full of things, and one is not true encountering the other. It's not that because Krishna closed his eyes because he was about to kill a woman is untrue, because he closed his eyes because he didn't want to see her face, or he didn't want to, see somebody who had killed so many children, or he was just an infant, just enjoying the act of nursing. Those are all true, but some Acharya will say it's this, some Acharya, but they're all true. It's amazing. That's Shabda. Every word we hear has a meaning behind it. As soon as we hear the word water, there is a substance water. Now, who has had experience of water in their life? Good. So when I say water, you know. Now if I say guanabana, maybe only a few of you from Caribbean nations will know what guanabana is. Right? Bruce, do you know what a guanabana is? So if I say water, you immediately I get it. But when I say guanabana, I have no idea what that is.
Also, his name is Banu.
Banu Swami. So there's a substance, water, behind the word. And if you really want to know what guanabana is, I'll tell you later. Similarly, as soon as we hear the word God, there is a meaning to it. If we receive that meaning and explanation of God from God himself, then it is perfect. That is Shabda. But if we speculate about the meaning of God, it is imperfect. Bhagavad Gita, which is the science of God, is spoken by the personality of God in himself. This is perfect knowledge. Mental speculators or so-called philosophers who are researching what is actually God will never understand the nature of God. Because what are they doing? They're using their senses, first of all. They're using the senses which we've already established as imperfect. And they're thinking that God may be this or God may be, and then they're using Anuman, they're theorizing maybe this, maybe that, perhaps this, perhaps that, but they'll never come to it. They'll come to God himself. When Krishna says, "Here I am," then there's God. Now, this relates to this conversation, because Prabhupada asked that, and I do have enough time. I did bring it. I was hoping to bring a recording of it, but I didn't do that. But the same, just yesterday morning, I was listening. So Prabhupada is saying, so we are presenting, here is God, Krishna. Now, it is up to you to accept it or not. That is your business. That is your business. And Krishna does the same thing to Arjuna. Yatai shasi chata kuro. Now you do what you want, Arjuna. I've done everything. Pinyasya asheshena. Deliberate on this fully. Asheshena means, completely. Don't leave anything unthought of. Deliberate it. Deliberate on everything I've just told you in this Bhagavad Gita. Deliberate. And then, yate chasi tata guru. Do what you want. There's no okay, now you have to, when it's giving it a very personal allowance, because that individuality, Krishna will never take away the individuality of the living entity. But touch Srinu, hear from Krishna, hear from his devotees, deliberate on it fully, and if you believe it, you'll believe. Because you don't need, and then he gives an example. He is accepted by many stalwarts, but so it goes on, and we won't have time. So you have to say who he is, because he asked him, well, what is your definition of God? He said, oh, God embraces everything. He said, well, that's not a real definition of God. And some people will say, oh, God is love, or God is this. And that maybe, and Prabhupada acknowledges, well, these may be some qualities of God, but they are not God. Then you have to say who he is. If you cannot, then your knowledge is imperfect. But we say, here is God. Here is Krishna, God. And those who are accepting, they are getting the benefit. So we are not presenting something fictitious, presenting real on the authority. Just like if I say, you were searching after spectacle. And these used to be called spectacles. Here's spectacle. So you test it by putting it on your ear. On your ear. Oh, yes, that's a spectacle. Those are 7 classes. Okay, yes. So he's making it very simple. You don't have to do a lot of studying, a lot of Anuman, and a lot of research. But we're saying Krishna is God. And the way to approach Krishna is through his holy name, and by doing service, and by engaging in activities for his glorification. And if you try it, then it's like putting on the glasses. Oh, yes. From the hearing alone. Similarly, we're putting, here is God. So you try to love, and this is the process of loving him. He's referring to, the process is our devotional practices, chanting Hare Krishna, associating with devotees, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the process for knowing God. And so, and he would often say, even earlier, he says, we're not talking about religion. We don't say this religion, that religion. Savaipum samparo dharmo. Yato bhakti radhoksaje. We don't care what name is in front of the religion, but are you getting bhakti? Is love of God the result? If love of God is the result, then fine, do whatever it is. If you are actually truly finding love of God. So try to look. If you accept everything, you will see, yes, I have got God. It is practical. It is not imaginary. So these devotees, some of you are very new coming in the association of devotees, and you're seeing devotees, and we also are experiencing devotees in our association that, wow, they have really understood this by the practice. It's not an imagination, that we're just imagining things. And Prabhupada said they're stalwarts. That was one thing when I remember I was in high school reading there was only one book of the Lilamrita published at that time. It was the first, the Planting the Seed one, that was first. So volume 2 was the first one. It's a little history to that. But I remember reading that in high school, and I remember my psychology teacher, sometimes he would argue with me, what is it you're doing? And I said, but, I had the faith that hearing about Srila Prabhupada and his life, that, I can't doubt it. I may not understand it, and I can't even explain it to you, Mr. Psychology teacher, but I know that Srila Prabhupada understands it. And I know that these devotees, it's not imaginary to them. That Prabhupada gives it very easy to understand. If I can find it. All right, he says, so that is our Krishna consciousness. We are presenting, here is God. Serve Him, love Him. Your life will be perfect. If anyone who is doing that, they're coming to the perfectional point. So we see it. We see many people are getting this and becoming very strong. Just like if I give a platter, prasadam, and you take it. You are hungry. Here, take this food. You take it. You will understand. Ah, yes, my hunger is satisfied. I'm getting strength. You don't require a certificate that you are now full. You don't require somebody else to tell you that. These are all experiential activities. And that's the purpose of Krishna House, is to give you an experiential activity. Because you're only going to be here for a short time, most of you. And we want to give you an experience that here is something beyond everything that you've experienced in our upbringing, whatever situation that is in any educational institution. Here's something that you're going to get that is experiential. A lot of time they're called labs, I think, in education, where you read the book and you do it, and then you go to a lab and you test it out. So this is what Krishna consciousness, this is what Krishna House is for. This is the lab. We're hearing so much, we're practicing it, and then it's ultimately still up to you. Yate chasi tata kuro. It's up to you to accept it or not. So we are getting to the end of the time. I had a lot more to say, but I don't have any more time. So we will end. Any questions? There are lots of. What is this? What's Gunavana? I think it's also called soursep. We have Trinidadian, right? Where's? Right here.
It's really good.
Soursep is the same as Gunavana?
No, I don't know.
She left. But it is the most ugliest looking fruit you've ever seen. But it is amazing. You take it, and you take the pulp, and you mix it with yogurt, and you make the most amazing smoothie. That's what it is. Very important question. Yes, two questions in the back. Either or, whoever.
You go first. I got my question.
I had a question about, so Prabhu, thank you for your class, very,
Oh, Hare
very
Krishna,
good.
I didn't recognize you practically.
I know, I got my hair.